the mountain village of Edivane, winter lingers, and the pines whisper warnings. The elders say, beware the lantern that walks without a hand to carry it. I'm your guide from the History Unulst, and tonight we follow a light that promises everything you've lost for a price. This is the Cursed Lantern. In Edivane, a mountain village where the pines crowd close and winter lingers like a guest who will not take a hint. Every house keeps the same small saying near the hearth. Beware the lantern that walks without a hand to carry it. The children repeat it when snow eats the roads and the wolves sing from the ridge. The old recite it with the weight of memory, and the young with a touch of mockery, until the year turns cruel and the nights come early and the forests remember they were here first. Some insist the line is just old wood smoke, fear turned into proverb. Others say it was earned once with blood and bone. If you ask who earned it, the village tells you the story of Rowan Hale. Rowan lived alone in a cottage of dark timber, his roof stitched with moss, his yard hemmed by stumps like broken teeth. He was a woodcutter by trade and a careful man by nature, the kind who sharpened his axe before dawn, who stacked wood with the grain always facing east, who answered neighbors with a nod more often than a word. The forest, he believed, asked two things of a person: respect and silence. Give it those, and it would let you pass. He had once had more: a wife, Lisa, who laughed loudly enough to make birds startle from branches, and the promise of a son who had never taken his first breath. The winter they were lost, something inside Rowan cooled into a permanent, practical frost. He worked, he slept, he woke, he answered his own stove with the same soft phrases he'd used on Lysa, and tried to pretend he did not. When the first snow fell each year, he would stand in the doorway, watching the porch graying under cold, and say to no one, you'd have liked this quiet. The year the trouble began, the wolves were bold and the larders thin. The village bell rang for meetings about grain, and a fever ran through the youngest. The moon stayed small for weeks on end. People spoke of signs the way people will when they are tired. On the coldest night of deep frost, Rowan heard a knock. He opened his door, expecting to find wind. Instead, he found a lantern. It sat perfectly centered on the top step, its ironwork eaten by rust and frost, its glass mottled with a mossy sheen, as if it had been dredged from the bottom of a lake. Within the glass, a flame curled and breathed with a color no honest fire keeps, bluish at the heart, fading green at the edges. It made no smoke, no scent, no heat Rowan could feel. He waited, expecting the prankster to giggle from the dark. Only the trees answered, creaking under ice. Curious, he said softly, as if the world were a skittish horse. When he reached to lift the lantern, it rose an inch before his fingers touched it. No higher, simply buoyant, as though eager. The handle was cold, but not biting. The moment he had it, a sound like silk pulled over stone whispered near his ear, Rowan Hale. He froze. It had been a long time since anyone said his name like that, like a fact pulled from a ledger instead of a greeting. He turned his head. Nobody stood there. Follow, the whisper said. I will light the way to what you have lost. He should have closed the door, He should have banked the stove, set the latch, and sat down to wait out the voice the way he waited out storms. But the whisper had chosen its words well and its timing better. The quiet in Rowan's chest shifted, revealing a hollowness he pretended not to notice. The wind raised the hairs along his wrists. The flame within the lantern drew a long breath, as if smelling him. Show me, he said. The lantern drifted forward like a moth on an unseen current, down the 3 steps and onto the path his boots had made earlier that day. The snow accepted it without scorch. When Rowan paused to take his cloak, the flame dipped, as patient as a guide hired for coin. He shut his door and followed. Beyond the last of the sheds and the pasture's dead grass, the pines began. They are crowded trees, pines. Even in daylight they conspire, and at night their branches mingle to hold back the moon. The lantern made a small greenish circle around Rowan. Beyond it, the dark was thick as felt. Where are we going? He asked after the second hill. To the place your wish can walk in daylight, said the voice. It was neither a man's nor a woman's, and it did not seem to come from the lantern so much as gather around it, the way light gathers around something bright. The heart of the wood remembers the first bargains. Ask and be served. I don't believe in bargains. He muttered. You believed once, it breathed, when you placed your hand over Lysa's at the midsummer stones. When you named the child, you would teach to split kindling. Belief is not a coin you spend once. It is a path you leave behind. The snow sang under his steps. The cold bit his cheeks, then numbed them. Once, something moved just beyond the circle of light, low to the ground, too limber to be a man, too sure-footed to be a deer. The lantern did not brighten or dim. If anything, the dark seemed to lean toward it, the way a listener leans toward a good story. They passed a birch whose trunk had been clawed to ribbons. They passed a stone as black as wet coal, carved through with a groove that could have been a channel for rain or a place where a rope had burned. Rowan should have known these as warnings. He kept his pace. The quiet in him was loud now, full of a possibility he could not think around. The voice spoke again, softer, as if it had moved closer to his mouth. What is it you would ask, Rowan Hale? If the world were listening for truth alone, I would ask for my family back, he said, and the answering silence tasted like copper. A clearing bloomed out of the trees, like a held breath released. The lantern stopped at its edge, then drifted forward, slow, as though showing him a chapel. Rowan had never seen this place. The snow lay unbroken, but for a pattern that made his eyes ache. A thrum of circles inside circles, lines that couldn't have been drawn by human hands, because they overlapped wrong, as if two drawings were layered and only the edges agreed. In the center of the design stood a stump, tall as a man's shoulder and flat as an altar. On it rested a narrow box the color of old bruises. The lantern hung above the box at the height of Rowan's chest. The whisper was no longer at the edge of hearing. It was intimate, almost tender. The first bargain is always simple, it said. Open the box. Name your wish with breath alone. What you lost will come. What will you take? Rowan asked. The voice did not hesitate. The ash of something you no longer use. My fire, he said with a small, humorless smile. Your loneliness, it said, and he felt his throat tighten the way it did when he wanted to cry and had forgotten how. He reached for the box. His hands shook, part cold, part hunger. The wood was not wood. It was too smooth, too warm. It could have been bone, polished by many fingers. He set his thumbs under the lid. The lantern's flame curled. A cat preparing to leap. He lifted. Inside lay a candle, stubby and guttered, more wick than wax. Its sides charred as if it had burned too hot and too long. An iron nail, crooked and black with age, was thrust through its middle. Rowan did not know its name, but the body knows things the mind forgets. His skin crawled. His breath made a shape in the air, and the shape did not disappear right away. It hung, and the greenish light filled it until the breath looked alive. Light it, said the voice, with your own flame. I didn't bring tinder. Silence. Then, indulgently, you brought breath. You brought want. There is no other spark stronger. He looked down. The wick was frayed, eager. And if I do this, he said, voice steady, Lysa returns, the child I never met. Whole and warm, you will not be alone again. Which was not the same promise, and Rowan knew it. But the wanting in him was a rope that had been pulled for years, until his ribs ached and his bones felt hollow. A person who is starving will forgive the shape of the food. He bent. He breathed on the wick. A long exhale that carried every unspoken word he had stored under his tongue. The candle flared, silent, sudden, hungry, blue-green, like the lantern. The iron nail glowed dull red for a heartbeat, and then cooled. The pattern in the snow trembled, the way a spider's web trembles when a fly is trapped. From the far edge of the clearing, footsteps. Rowan, said a voice that had lived in his dreams without meaning to. It was shaped like Lysa's, with that bright feathery rise at the end of his name. He turned too quickly and slipped. His knee struck the stump. He did not feel it. She was walking through the pines with a careful, hesitant smile, as if she had not done so in years. Snow stood untouched behind her. She left no prints, but she was right there. Her winter scarf, the one with the mustard stripe he'd hated, her hair escaping in coils, her mouth warm in the lamplight. I thought, she began, and then she saw the lantern hovering and the candle burning with its nail. Her smile wavered. What have you done? Brought you home, he said. Brought? Something tugged at his sleeve. He looked down and saw a child with big gazed eyes, the color Lysa's father had carried, a small mouth pursed with concentration, a hand that fit between his fingers and thumb. No prints in the snow, no steam of breath, but the weight of a hand is also the shape it makes in your hand. He had never known that, and now he knew it too well. Papa, said the child, with the careless certainty of the loved. Rowan's heart made a sound he would never be able to describe, not even to himself. Come away from the circle, Lysa said. She had not moved any closer. Her eyes flicked to the candle, to the nail, to the spiral, designs the snow hid, poorly. Rowan, please. They'll go, if I do, he whispered, and the whisper answered immediately, pleased. Only a breath begun can end. Step away with the candle and the light follows. You may carry your wish home. Lisa's mouth flattened. Who told you that? He could not say. If he looked up at the lantern, the voice would fill his ears again. If he did not, the child would tug at his sleeve, and he would look at the child, because to look at your child is a law the body enforces. Rowan, she said, no longer feathered, hard. Now, the way the village bell's second ring is harder than the first. You can't keep us. There is a shape to longing that isn't love. He laughed a poor, raw laugh. You're here. We are what the forest remembers of us, she said. She reached toward him and stopped at the edge of the circle, as if a glass wall stood there. And it remembers the price, too. He swallowed. What is the price? Before Lysa could answer, the whisper wrapped his skull like cloth soaked in cold water. Loneliness is a simple ash. We take it, we burn it, we leave you with full hands. Hold fast to the candle and follow. Your door will be warm. The cradle by the stove will rock. The night will learn your names again. Step, step. He took one step, then another, candle cupped in his hands. The child made a delighted sound, high and clear, and the sound put a seam in his soul and stitched it shut. Lisa, beyond the circle, kept pace. She was not moving her feet. The shadows moved her. Fear swam up under Rowan's ribs, an eel brushing the docks. Rowan, she said once more, and whatever she meant to give him, a warning, a mercy, was cut short, not by the whisper, but by something lower than the whisper, the tone of a well that has no bottom. It rose from the interface of snow and earth, a hunger knotted around the complicated lines. The child's fingers tightened. Papa, the child said again, and this time Rowan heard, under the innocent syllables, the strange mimic quality of a bird trying a human word. He looked down. For just a heartbeat, the child's eyes flickered like candlelight turned sideways, showing not iris and pupil, but the impression of a wick drowning in old wax. The eel inside him turned and bit. He stopped walking. What do you want? He asked the voice. He had never asked it what it wanted. People forget to, when the offer is tender, to make a candle of you. It said, unbothered now, to add your longing to our light. This stump has held many boxes. Your village has kept us trim. We eat what is left behind. A wish and we are never hungry. And them? He nodded to the woman and the child, who were and were not his. A kindness, the whisper said, with a softness that offended him because it was so easily worn. Some impressions, comfort. A door opens, easier for a man who thinks he is going home. Lysa's eyes were bright and furious. She set her palm against the invisible line at the edge of the circle, and it hissed like iron and snow. Blow it out, she told him. Rowan, now. The child turned its face upward. The face was perfect, which is how you sometimes know a face is not a face. Don't, it breathed, the second syllable slipping like water over gravel. Rowan looked at the candle. Its nail was sunk all the way through the wax. The wick burned too cleanly for the ragged thing it was. The lantern hung motionless, like an eye that only blinked when you didn't watch it. Behind him, in the near distance, he could conjure a version of his cottage with a pot of soup he had already salted wrong, and the chair he had repaired 3 times, and the empty place on the bed that had the habit of feeling full on the meanest nights. He thought of the saying by the hearth. He thought of respect and silence, and how sometimes silence is not respect, but abdication. Will blowing it out bring you back? He asked Lysa, without looking up. It will keep you human, she said, which is the only way you could ever find me again. He did not ask where again might be. He did not ask how. He put his palms around the candle to shelter it from the wind that had found its way into his cloak without asking. He drew breath deeper than he had in months, deeper than he had since the day he had stood by a small grave and learned that grief can feel like breathing glass. Then he blew. The candle died with a sound like a beetle snapping. Dark fell hard, fast, heavy. The lantern bucked midair and cracked, and a filament of something inside it shrieked at a pitch only fear can hear. The lines in the snow collapsed like a net cut at one anchor. The clearing did not disappear. It rearranged. Rowan stumbled, struck the stump with his hip, and went to one knee. When he lifted his head, the lantern was gone. So were Lysa and the child. He was alone, with the stump, the box, and his breath fogging in front of his face. Ordinary, white now, already thinning, already gone. The forest did not sigh. The forest did not gloat. It only stood, which is the most threatening posture it knows. Rowan stayed on his knees for a long time, practicing the discipline of not calling a name into a place that would answer. When he finally stood, his legs shook. He put the spent candle back into the box because he was not the sort of man who littered in a place where he had asked for a gift and refused it. He picked up his lantern, the honest one, the dented tin thing he had carried out of habit and forgotten, and he found his way home, not because the path was kind, but because he was stubborn. The cottage felt smaller that night. He banked the stove as he always did, and the sound of coal settling made him flinch. In the morning, he rose and split kindling, and his axe sang its clean song, and his muscles recalled their work. He looked at the doorway and said to it, because speaking helps, not today. He told no one for 3 days. On the fourth, the wolves came down in daylight, and the village gathered to talk of traps and bait. Rowan listened to his neighbors ring the bell and argue and search the corners of one another's faces for someone to blame for winter. When they were done, he said, "Someone left a lantern at my door," and silence fell the way it always does when the story you've all rehearsed seems to be stepping forward to speak. He did not make it grand. He told it like a man telling of a rotten beam in a roof, the stump, the box, the candle, and its nail, the voices that are not voices, the offer folded into the oldest ache. Old Mara Gray, who had a talent for listening without moving her mouth, placed a palm over the village bell as if she could still it retroactively. "Did you light it?" she asked, and did not wince at her own readiness for the worst. "I did," he said. "I blew it out." "Then we hang iron on our doors tonight," she said. "We sweep the thresholds with ash. We cut new lines in the yard and fill them with salt. We learn verses our parents forgot." She gave Rowan a look that was not unkind. "And we do not follow anything into the trees that we did not bring ourselves." The village did as she said. The wolves left again. The fever ran its course. The saying by the hearth, which had been recited lazily for the last generation, found its corners again. People still saw lights. You always will. Near forests, there are foxfire and mushrooms, bog gases and frost catching the moon. But sometimes a light moved with intention. It paused, as if waiting for a companion to catch up. It put itself down on a doorstep with impossible schoolteacher neatness. It hovered over a clearing no one admitted to marking on their maps. Those who heard whispers learned to answer aloud in the common voice, where their neighbors could hear and respond. No, they said. No, thank you. And if a want rose up in them so large it made their ribs ache, they brought it to the bell at noon and spoke it to people who had hands and ears and the ability to say, I know. As for Rowan, he did not become a saint, nor a hermit, nor a hero. He was what he had been, a woodcutter, careful and stubborn. Sometimes, in the doorway, with the night lying against the yard like a cold dog, he felt the shape of the other life like a door. He could almost see through. Lisa humming, a small pair of feet thudding by the stove. He said out loud, Not today. And the saying did its work. It kept him in the day he had. When the first thaw came, he took a small iron nail and set it in the lintel above his door. Not the crooked black thing from the clearing, but a clean, bright one, hammered in with an economy that pleased him. On a piece of pine, he burned a careful script with a coal from the stove.